Hi everybody, this is me again, Ali Mukhtar. I'm so happy to meet you again in my lectures in literary criticism. Today we are going to tackle in our lecture Alexander Pope, one of the outstanding figures of English literature. As you know, we started before this time with the three great critics who are considered the classical writers of the Western civilization. We started number one with Plato, then Aristotle, and after that we started with Longinus. And then we moved to English literature, and then we will start with Alexander Pope. Alexander Pope represents the Neoclassical age. He is one of the outstanding figures in the history of world and English literature because this greatness, is ascribed to his contribution to English and world literature. First of all, we have to know that Alexander Pope is a Neoclassical writer, and he is one of the founder of the Augustan age. And don't be confused when I say Neoclassical age or the Augustan age or the 18th century literature. All these names are the same. Even sometimes we call this age the Restoration age. Why it is Restoration? Because you know that it is the age of the restoration of the kingdom. And then the English writers brought with them, they brought from France the ancient rules of writing poetry. Then they initiated what is called the Neoclassical age. And the word Neoclassical means to revive the ancient writers, because we have two parts. We have Neo and Classical. Neo means to revive, to reuse, to imitate the classical writers. The classical writers means Plato, Aristotle, Homer, etc. Therefore, Alexander Pope and John Dryden worked together to initiate this new school in England. Then, in his poem, by the way, we have to shed light on his poem, which is his, documentary paper, which documents his theory concerning literature and literary criticism. In his poem, as you know, he has a poem called Essay on Criticism. He directly addresses critics rather than poets. Therefore, from the title, because as you see that the title is very suggestive, يعني عنوان القصيدة بإيحاء واضح إلى النقد. Essay on Criticism, مقالة في النقد، وهي من أشهر ما كتب ألكسندر بوب في الأدب. In his poem Essay on Criticism, he directly addresses critics rather than poets. He undertakes to what? In this poem, Essay on Criticism, he adopts a project, يعني تبنى مشروع. This project is what? Is to codify. By the word codify, to insert Neoclassical literary criticism. That means he established in this poem what is called the Neoclassical methods of writing poetry. He codified certain rules, certain, laws to be followed by the writers of his time. Again, by this, way, he tries to impose on people his own way of writing, which is taken from the classical writers. لذلك النقاد يشبهون العصر الكلاسيكي الإنجليزي بالتشدد في مرجعية الأدب، حيث أن الأدب يخضع إلى القوانين القديمة، إلى السلف الصالح من الكتاب، وهو قريب من السلفية في الفكر الديني الإسلامي، حيث الرجوع إلى السلف الصالح، لأن السلف الصالح معصوم من الخطأ. نفس الفكرة. Alexander Pope says that we have to go back to imitate, to reuse the ancient writers because they are the masters of literature. They know everything about human nature. Then no one can doubt their own mind. They are the fathers, and the fathers should not be asked about what they do. Then we have to follow them blindly. No way to argue, no way to add, no way to change. We have to keep the pattern of life as the same. It means to achieve stability in taste, in the way of writing. Again, we can say Alexander Pope calls for what? He calls to authorize literature, to make literature authorized. There is an authority which what? Identifies the good poetry and the false one. According to Pope, the golden age is the classical age. إذا العصر الذهبي بالنسبة له هو عصر السلف الصالح, the ancient writers. As we see, as I told you before, it is the age of Homer, it is the age of Aristotle, it is the age of Horace and Longinus. These are the writers who, he says, by the way, Alexander Pope says, that these are the writers who discovered the truth. Here is the idea, as if he talks about absolute reality. And we as modern people, as he says, have no right to talk about reality or truth. Truth is already discovered by whom? By the ancient writers. We just to imitate. يعني دورنا احنا كشعراء او نقاد او ادباء او كتاب فقط تقليد القدامى السلف الصالح، وليس لدينا ادنى حق بالتجديد. There is no way to renew poetry. There is no way to add, as I told you before. And he says, because the classical writers, what? Have what is called the unerring nature. They have such nature which cannot be erred. عندهم طبيعة، يمتلكون الطبيعة التي لا يمكن أن تخطأ. Unerring nature. Yes. يعني كأنه أعطى العصمة علما إلى the ancient writers. It is the critic, he says, and the poet, okay, task. Then the poet's and the critic's task is what? First to know and then to copy. It is a matter of to know them and to copy them. أول مرة, number one, you have to read them well, to spend time to read the ancient writers, then you can claim yourself as a poet or a critic. Then to copy them. It is a matter of copying. إذن هنا عندنا مسألة استنساخ السلف واستنساخ ancient writers. Just to copy them. تذهب تقرأ كتب التاريخ اللي تتعلق بالقدامى من الكتاب، وبعد ذلك تبدأ باستنساخ أفكارهم. It is a matter of recycling. إعادة تدوير الأفكار. Recycling of thoughts and ideas and styles. Okay? To copy these authors are not nature. Then he says you have no right to imitate nature because nature is changeable. You have the right only to imitate the ancient writers, because he says if you want to know nature, there is no need to go to nature. You have to go to the ancient writers, because to copy them is what? To copy nature. إذا أنت عرفت هذول الكتاب وتعرفت على ما كتبوا من أعمال أدبية، ما يحتاج تذهب إلى الطبيعة الإنسانية وتدرس كتب أخرى وتجدد بالأدب. لا. It is a matter of to copy them is to copy nature. Pope asserts, emphasizes the idea that the chief requirement of a good poet is what? Good, or to be a genius one, or nature and genius. What does this mean? He says the writer should be genius. إذن هنا يتكلم عن العبقرية. يعني الكاتب يجب أن يمتلك العبقرية. Number one, genius. But genius with its conditions. يعني أن تكون عبقري لكن العبقرية مشروطة. هذا ما هو على النقيض من الرومانسية اللي راح نجيها في محاضراتنا القادمة عن الرومانtic age with William Wordsworth and others. He says he has to be genius coupled, you see? Coupled with what? With a knowledge of the classical and understanding of the rules of poetry. يعني if you are genius, you can't claim your poetry. أنت عبقري لكن لا تقول أنا شاعر. Unless you go back to your authority. إذا ما ترجع إلى السلطة المطلقة، سلطة الكتاب القدامى، حتى تكون شاعر متميز. إذن he puts poetry under the mercy of authority. Look, you have to be a knowledgeable person. And this idea, by the way, is similar to T.S. Eliot idea that we are going to discuss later on. هاي شبيهة إلى نظرية T.S. Eliot اللي راح نناقشها في محاضراتنا القادمة عن tradition and individual talent، الإرث والذكاء الفردي. لأن T.S. Eliot يعني راح نناقشه في المحاضرات القادمة يقول You cannot say I am a poet unless you have the tradition of whole Europe. لا تستطيع أن تقول إنني شاعر ما لم أن يكون لديك شنو إرث أوروبا، يعني مطلع على كل أدب أوروبا. Then you can say I am a poet. Yes. And this is really the main or the major difference between Neoclassical age and the Romantic age. هذا هو جوهر الاختلاف بين المدرسة الرومانسية والمدرسة الكلاسيكية في الشعر. لأن المدرسة الرومانسية لا تؤمن بالقوانين اللي راح نناقشها إن شاء الله في حلقتنا القادمة. Then he says that the classical and understanding of the rules of poetry, such knowledge must be tempered. Again, he adds a new idea. He says knowledge and genius are not enough, not sufficient to qualify you to be what? To be a poet. إذن العبقرية والمعرفة في ancient writers are not enough and sufficient to qualify you and تؤهلك أن تكون شاعر. What is else? ما هو الشيء الثالث? Must be tempered with politeness. Oh, this is really a very important point that he raised, that the poet should be what? Polite. إذن وضع مرة أخرى الشعر والأدب تحت إطار ماذا؟ politeness, morality. وضع تحت إطار الأخلاق. The poet should be highly moral person. وهنا طبعا إلى أحقية لأن he is the voice of his nation. هو صوت الأمة. And the voice of the nation should be what? Polite person. يعني صوت الأمة يجب أن يكون إنسان راقي، إنسان مؤدب، educated person, has high ethics and moralities. Not anyone can claim I am a poet and I represent this nation, I represent this group of people. الذين آمنوا, those who are great people, who are highly polite persons, who can be trusted by people, because people will follow you. You are what? Imitating the ancient writers, and the ancient writers are the masters of politeness, the masters of human nature, and then people will come to imitate you. If you are wrong, people will be wrong. If you are good, people will be good. Then you have to be what? Highly polite person. هذه مسؤولية أخلاقية تقع على الشاعر في العصر الكلاسيكي، أن يكون إنسان ذو سمعة طيبة، مؤدب، خلوق، حتى تكتمل صورة الشاعر المثالية. Because they believed at that time that poets were prophets. They are teachers of society, and teachers should be what? Highly polite. You see, this is really again part of the story. And then he This knowledge must be tempered. يعني أن تروض هذه المعرفة بالأخلاق. With politeness and grace, because he says without good breeding, truth is disapproved. If you have no good breeding، إذا أنت لا تملك التربية الجيدة، الحقيقة تنطقها غير كافية للإقناع. إذا ربط الشعر بالأخلاق. This is really part of the idea that poetry is written to teach morality. هذه جزء من الفكر بأنه النقد أو الشعر والنقد كذلك والأدب يكتب لكي يعلم الأخلاق، لا يكتب لأجل البليجرز مثل ما نشوفه راح في العصر الرومانسي. Again he says that critics and poets, now we have both, critics and poets are what? Must need certain rules. They have what? To know certain rules. They need rules. To be good or to be a good critic or poet, one must follow the established traditions as defined by the ancients. Then again we have here to follow tradition، الموروث الثقافي للحضارة الغربية. Then we see that Pope was against the idea of outbreaks and free verse. He says you have no right to outbreak or to write free verse. And then we see that the dominant form of poetry during the Neoclassical age was heroic couplet. كان الشكل السائد في العصر النيوكلاسيكي الإنجليزي هو الهيرويك couplet. And by heroic couplet معناها الثنائية البطولية، هو two or each successive lines have the same rhyme. وهذا يعني تجيك أي قصيدة هسه إذا كانت تحتوي على هذا الإيقاع أو هذا الوزن العفو، تقدر تقول عليها شنو؟ هي قصيدة من العصر النيوكلاسيكي. Since he is governed by rules, okay, and good taste, poetry as defined by Pope, let us define poetry by Pope, because later on we are going to define poetry by William Wordsworth. He seeks to reaffirm truth. إذن ما هو دور الشاعر؟ هنا راح نعطي the task of the poet is to reaffirm إعادة توكيد، to emphasize, to ascertain truths or absolutes already discovered. إذن إعادة تثبيت المطلقات، المسلمات في المجتمع. The task of the poet is what? To reaffirm truth or absolutes already discovered by the classical writers. Then the task of the critic إذن عندنا دور الشاعر to reaffirm these absolutes that are already discovered by the ancient writers. ودور الناقد, and then the task of the critic is clear, to validate and maintain classical values in the ever-shifting flux of cultural change. The task of the critic is what? To maintain, to validate what? The values, the rules, okay, to defend the rules of the ancient writers, not to what? To allow anyone to change these rules. إذن هو من يدافع عن الذائقة الاجتماعية. وكذلك هذه نظرة شمولية للأدب. الأدب في الأنظمة الشمولية يخضع إلى لجان تصحح مسار الأدب عندما يخرج الشعراء أو الكتاب أو النقاد عن الطريق الموضوع لهم، فيقومون بالتصحيح طريق من يكتب. إذن هي سلطة. It is an authority, okay, that is imposed on writers to follow. لذلك واحدة من مشكلاتنا اليوم في الأدب الحديث، يعني الآن في الوطن العربي أو في العالم كله، هو لا توجد سلطة تصحح مسار الكاتب. أصبحت الكتابة يعني تصرف شخصي وليس خاضع لرقابة فنية. لذلك نشوف في الأنظمة الديمقراطية لا توجد وزارات اسمها وزارة الإعلام أو وزارات تكون أو تتدخل في الذائقة العامة. الذائقة أصبحت فردية وليس جمعية. It is not collective, it is individual, let me say, way of writing. Then the critic task is what? As I told you before, I repeat myself, to validate and maintain what classical values, okay, in the ever-shifting flux of culture change. يعني من يتغير المجتمع يأتي الناقد يصحح هذا المسار ويرجع المياه إلى مجاريها. Therefore, the critic becomes the custodian and the defender. إذن دور الناقد هو المحامي والمدافع. Custodian and what? Defender of good taste. يدافع عن شنو؟ الذائقة الجيدة للأدب and cultural values والقيم الاجتماعية. By affirming the imitation of classical writers and through them of nature itself, and by establishing the acceptable standards of writing literature. This is really Alexander Pope. This is his main ideas concerning poetry, literature, criticism. Just to conclude that Alexander Pope believes in ancient writers, and he says that the task of the poet and the critics is to maintain the values, the ethics, the absolutes of the ancient writers, and to keep the taste of people saved from change. Again, he says that the poet should be highly polite person, because genius and good knowledge are not enough to qualify the poet to be a poet unless he what adds to these three or two aspects, his being a tempered and polite person. Thank you very much indeed for your listening. I hope that you get benefit from my lecture. I meet you again in the coming days. Goodbye.